Last night, we celebrated a number of community media outlets. I don't think they were ever together in one place at one time, but we were all together in Durham. Democracy Now! Broadcasts on WNCU every evening. That WNCU is a NPR station in Durham at the historically black college, NCCU, which is North Carolina Central University. We were also celebrating the People's Channel in Chapel Hill. The People's Channel is public access TV. We learned about Lyle, actually, when I was on a low-power FM station yesterday called WCOM-LP in Carrboro, and they were talking about Lyle Estel and all his remarkable work. And finally, we're celebrating a group called Balance and Accuracy in Journalism. As we end today's show right here in North Carolina, on a somber note, looking at the spate of mass shootings across the country. Since March 10th, 8 rampages have left at least 57 people dead.
It's happened again. A gunman opens fire. His victims are police officers.
4 officers down, and the suspect is dead. It is a grisly scene on the streets of East Oakland today.
8 people are dead and several others wounded after a gunman stormed into a North Carolina nursing home and opened fire.
A distraught man shoots and kills his 5 young children and his wife before taking his own life.
It's a shooting rampage. It took place over a 24-mile stretch of southern Alabama. When it was over, 11 people were dead.
At least 4 people have been shot. Several people, we are told, taken hostage at an immigration service center in Binghamton, New York.
Police are calling it a family-on-family murder-suicide. 6 people were shot to death, including a toddler, a 4-year-old girl, and a 10-year-old boy. A 7th person, a woman in her mid-30s, was critically injured.
Reports around the country. In Binghamton, New York, a gunman attacked an immigration center, killing 13 people before taking his life. In Washington State, a man shot dead his 5 children before killing himself. In Pittsburgh, 3 police officers were shot dead as they responded to a domestic violence call. In Alabama, a lone gunman killed at least 9 people, including 4 of his relatives, in a shooting spree before taking his own life. And here in North Carolina, in Carthage, 8 people died after a gunman opened fire at a nursing home in the town of Carthage. 7 elderly patients died, as well as a nurse. I'm joined right here in Raleigh, North Carolina, by Roxanne Kolar. She's the executive director of North Carolinians Against Gun Violence. Welcome to Democracy Now!, Roxanne.
Thank you.
Talk about these rampages.
There's nothing less to be said about them, that they're an epidemic. We're talking about over a span of just a little over 24 hours, having these 3 shootings right in the row just in the last few days. And the important thing to remember about gun violence as an epidemic is that, like all epidemics, it is preventable, and we can take steps to change that.
Oh, what?
Well, I think the first is that we see programs all over the country that have gun violence prevention, working directly with youth to stop these negative patterns and to end the cycle. And then there's sensible gun legislation. We don't like to talk about it, it's a dirty word, but there's laws we can pass that will keep guns out of the wrong hands.
In many of these incidents, the people who were doing the shooting actually had permits for their guns. So obviously the existing permitting system is doing nothing to be able to prevent these kinds of incidents.
Absolutely. And the truth is, this changes from state to state. In some states, there's very weak standards on a permit. In other states, there's no bulk purchase limit. So in the unfortunate incident in Pennsylvania, this man was, through propaganda and fear, told to stockpile weapons. And I think we know what happens when you combine fear and stockpile weapons. So there's a lot more we can do to strengthen this process.
The issue of gun violence and domestic violence. I mean, the officers who were killed in Pittsburgh, they were responding to a domestic violence call.
Absolutely. I don't have national numbers, but it's pretty close. But here in North Carolina, about 50% of domestic violence homicides are gun homicides. And when you look at certain states, you'll see that a few states have passed laws so that when an abuser has a restraining order put against them, they also have to surrender their weapons, and law enforcement goes out and takes those weapons. In other states where they attempt to pass these laws, there's actually resistance, and people will openly say, my right to own a weapon outbalances the right to protect domestic violence victims and survivors.
The laws here in North Carolina?
In North Carolina, you are supposed to surrender your weapons. It's not as strongly enforced as we like.
Mm-hmm. And overall legislation that you would like to see at the state and national level?
On domestic violence or just in general?
On the issue of guns.
I mean, I think we have to strengthen our background system. No one should own a weapon without going through as strenuous checks as possible. I think we strengthen our safe storage laws so that children cannot get access to guns, cannot commit suicide. 85% of youth suicides are committed with a family member, usually a parent's gun. Those are the same guns on our streets and gangs, same guns coming in our schools.
And the impact of the NRA, obviously, and the lobbying of our politicians on this issue?
Are you talking about the opposition's ability to stop this legislation?
Right.
And in that case, yes. The NRA is very strong. And what I think is that we have to remember is that that's a lot of propaganda. In North Carolina, we have 51% gun ownership. We work every day with retired police officers, with hunters, with sport shooters, with gun owners who believe in the right to carry weapons, as we do, but also believe in sensible legislation that can protect our communities. However, when the only message reaching them is a message of fear, it's a message of you'll lose your right to carry a weapon, then that mass public support for sensible gun legislation gets silenced.
We are coming up on the anniversary of Columbine.
I'm sure you saw that one of the fathers who lost his child at Columbine is fighting very hard right now in Maine to close the gun show loophole, and that the gun show loophole itself, had it been closed, could have prevented Columbine. And these boys were able to have a friend purchase shotguns for them at a gun show from private sellers. And if that was not there, who knows what could have happened if we could have prevented this.
Well, Roxanne Kohler, I want to thank you very much for being with us, joining us here in North Carolina as we continue our tour around the country. Community media, community voices. That does it for a broadcast. We now fly out to Athens, Ohio. I'll be speaking today at 5 o'clock at the Scripps College of Journalism, Templeton Blackburn Memorial Auditorium in Athens at Ohio University. Tomorrow, April 10th, in Columbus, Ohio at noon at the First Unitarian Universalist Church. I'll be then headed to Cleveland tomorrow night, and then we head on to Portland, Oregon. You can check our website, democracynow.org. Also be speaking at Kent State. Democracy Now! Is produced by a remarkable group of people. Mike Burke and Sharif Abdel-Quddus, Anjali Kamet, and Nicole Salazar, Steve Martinez, Hani Massoud, Robbie Karen. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez. Thanks for joining us.